because when we slow down, that pain somewhere in our body hurts more. We have to pay attention to it, or the thoughts or emotions that we're trying to maybe run away from are more present. And so slowing down can be difficult for people because things resurface, and they surface because they want to be dealt with. They want to be let go of, they want to be paid attention to, whether it's physical or mental or emotional.
Today's guest is Miranda Brooking, a rest consultant and founder of Rest Uncovered, a business born from her lived experience with burnout and her desire to cultivate a new relationship with rest. Her journey into rest began during her own recovery, where she felt frustrated resting without feeling restored. Through a process of trial and error and intuition, Miranda discovered that true rest is more than just sleep, and now teaches others the map she wished she had. Welcome, Miranda.
Hi, Anita. Thank you for having me.
And I really love the intro because most people just think rest is sleep, and absolutely it's a lot more than that. So let's dive in.
Yeah.
So with that said, what is one of the most courageous things you have done?
I would say one of the most courageous things, which I didn't know was courageous at the time, was taking care of my late mother when she was ill. She had cancer. It came on very quickly. And it was one of those situations where we didn't even have a choice of hospice. It just moved so fast. We had to have her still in the home with support of a mobile nurse and my sister and I. And really, it was just as it was, this is what we had to do. But then looking back, being like, wow, what we actually witnessed and went through, and took a while to process afterwards to really realize actually how courageous that was to be in that situation without a lot of, 24-hour help.
Absolutely imagine. Yes. And it is very courageous. And I think it's rewarding as well.
To be able to have done that for her is, I'm grateful to have been able to do that and been home to do that, because I was such a traveler. Sometimes I wasn't home, and that would have just broken my heart to not have been there. So yeah, the timing, amazing how things work out sometimes.
Looking back, when did you first realize your relationship with the rest wasn't healthy?
I would say it was the second round of burnout that I went through in 2024. It was very much a period of not listening to my body, finding, things getting worse and worse, not just in my physical, but in my mental body too. And then really kind of all of a sudden finding myself off work on stress leave and realizing, wow, I have actually never really considered the importance of rest, and that I didn't really have a regular relationship with rest. It was kind of every once in a while when I had the time, but it wasn't an important daily thing, which it is now.
Oh, that's good to hear. Yes, because it's breaking those habits. You described being caught on a hamster wheel for many years. What did that look like in your everyday life?
Kind of like you get sucked into the vortex of the go, 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 right? Our society, our culture, whatever you want to call it, is very, it rewards productivity and efficiency, multitasking beyond our actual capacity. And we get used to that. And then all of a sudden being quiet and still feels uncomfortable. And so for me, it was started in 2002 with cruise ships. I worked 6 months on and then had 6 weeks off. And so it was every day working. And then all of a sudden I would get home and I'd collapse and I'd sleep a lot and watch TV. And, and just, I didn't realize the pattern then, but it really did carry on. And when my mom passed away in 2013, it almost perpetuated it, because then it was like, well, life is short, you need to live. And all of a sudden I was flowing into it even deeper. And it was like, just over planning. I remember one summer was living in Vancouver, and I had a friend of mine that say, oh, let's get together. Let's do something this summer. And I was like looking at my schedule. I'm like, this is June. And I'm like, maybe in August. Like I'd already filled my July so much. And I think it was a mix of wanting to live life, but then also control. If I knew what was coming, I was safer, because my mom's death was, quite quick in a few months. And so it was, something we weren't expecting in her 50s. And so it was those things mixed together that ended up perpetuating that just go, 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 and never resting.
Yeah, it's difficult at times and very challenging. Absolutely.
Mhm.
It's like hard to get that balance this day and age because we do all live in a fast-paced world, and if you don't put it in the diary, it doesn't happen, and I can totally understand that. So yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely teach now. Sometimes we do need to schedule rest and we do need to be intentional with it, not just the, oh my God, I'm so tired. I'm going to like veg out on the couch and be like a zombie. It's actually having moments through the day where you're intentional with it so that you are fully replenishing versus, when you're getting into that collapse state, it takes a lot more to replenish.
Yes. Were there signs your body was giving you before you burnt out that you now recognized but didn't see at the time?
Yes, for me, and everybody's journey will be a bit different, but I teach 3 stages of depletion. So there's the whispers, the warnings, and the alarm bells. And with these, it's for me the earlier signs, the whispers were occasional clumsiness. So like maybe I would stub my toe, or I would, just not being paying attention. I would walk into a wall, or grating cheese, I would like grate my fingernail because I wasn't present. I was tired. I wasn't paying attention fully to what I was doing. So it's little things like that for me. And then mentally, forgetfulness, irritation, that sort of, I'm feeling off, but I don't know why, and that being consistent. So those were sort of the earlier signs. And then eventually my body started ringing loudly and I still ignored it. I ended up having a rash in various parts of my body. It was hot and itchy. And I went out and bought like 3 different kinds of cream and like, trying to fix the symptoms, but not actually dealing with what's really depleting me in order to actually improve. And once I did go off on stress leave, it was amazing how fast my skin cleared up and I stopped having to struggle with that, because the stress was starting to dissipate and my body was able to actually, have a higher immune system, and all the benefits that come in with rest started to take over the stress.
It's funny how when we stop, the body actually, will heal. So
Yeah,
what
exactly.
was the hardest part of recovering from burnout?
I think it was layers for like an onion, but to start, it was the guilt that was present, the guilt of all of a sudden being removed from my full-time job and leaving projects and people, in the lurch, and just feeling like I'd let people down. And so really moving through different emotions. There was maybe some anger there as well, as to, it wasn't just me that was, putting pressure on myself and making me work harder and longer hours. It was the culture of the work environment as well. And so there was a lot of emotions. And then eventually I just, when I got to that stage where resting wasn't replenishing me and I was just frustrated, yeah, I felt lost. I felt like, where is the support to tell me what's next and how I'm supposed to feel? And there was no real guidance for me. And the medical system here, there were some things that were helpful, and then other times where I would just go and they would want to, you know, give me a medication to help me feel better. And again, that just felt like masking the symptom and not dealing with what was actually happening underneath.
Yes, and I think that's a lot of the time there is a lot of masking that goes on, and it's getting to that deep core. During that recovery journey, what surprised you the most about what rest actually is?
Oh, I think like most people, I thought it was sleep. I thought it was, napping when you can in the day. And I love a good nap, but I actually don't nap as much anymore now that I work with rest multidimensionally. And so, yeah, looking at the relational side of rest and the connection, the creativity, not just the physical and the mental, the emotional side. There is, especially as women, I will say we have a tendency to, we have a lot of emotions that can happen with hormones and everything in our body, but yet in certain situations, we don't feel safe to expose those and to release them. And so we repress them. And then we all know body keeps the score and all that stuff we've heard over the years. But it's true. It's said for a reason. And, if we don't have that outlet to be able to be fully ourselves and to not mask and to allow, a judgment-free space to share, then those things can feel heavy and the emotional weight will start. And that depletion is not something that sleep can fix, right? And so it is really realizing that there are dimensions of rest that we need to pay attention to and be intentional with.
Can't agree more. Yes, absolutely. And we don't always listen to the quiet
Yeah.
whispers of the body. It's always telling us.
It's true. And when you get really deeply depleted, I think the part of my journey was actually realizing that I lost what my body was trying to tell me, like the signals I wasn't unfamiliar with. I'd become so in my head with my job and my life that I didn't know the signs. I didn't know what the certain signals was feeling like. I had to relearn and remember, oh yeah, that's hunger. Or oh yeah, I need to go outside and get fresh air. Or I need to get, meet with a friend. And like, there's certain things that happen in the body, and the way I teach the Rest Uncovered method around that feeling points to an area of rest that you might be a little depleted in.
How did burnout ultimately become the catalyst for creating Rest Uncovered?
I think at first there was a lot of surrender. It was, once I did leave the job officially that helped put me in burnout, I ended up just, yeah, very lost because our identities can be very much tied to our work. And so it was surrendering to, okay, I don't have that side of my identity. So who am I without the work? And as I really allowed that to flow and really trusted the intuition that was arising of like, okay, go and do this experience and go and do this experience. And each of those things through my recovery was really building on the work that I'm doing now. And so I was actually in a community circle where I actually had a breathwork experience. And during that breathwork experience, I had this little voice going, "You're a rest consultant. You're a rest consultant." Like I'd already kind of thought, how could I teach this? And then that came in during that moment of stillness, that moment of reconnecting with my body. And all of a sudden I was like, wow. And then it took a few months to percolate, that drop in that I had. But eventually I was like, wow, okay, I think I can do this. Like I can figure this out, and I can look back at the time I recovered for a year and really saw phases that I moved through, and what was it that supported, that helped, what was it that didn't, and really started to create and see the beauty that was actually going to be coming from that experience, and that this was a part of my path. And as I say that, I get goosebumps because it's like, it's my body going, yes, yes, this is a part of your path. You are right. You're on the right track. So I've relearned that particular clue, and that feels really good.
And that's absolutely beautiful. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Why do you think so many people struggle to rest without feeling guilty? Because let's face it, we all feel we should be doing something, oh, we can't be lazy.
I think we get into a pattern, we get into the safety of our schedule where, after dinner, you do the dishes. After breakfast, you do the dishes. There's like, it's such a detailed schedule that you get used to because there's safety in it. But then you're not actually in the moment thinking and feeling into what you actually need. And I worked with somebody in the spring of this year that was telling me how she was feeling, and I was, encouraging her to not stick to the schedule so regimentally, right? Like, so it's like, okay, if after dinner you don't want to do the dishes, is tomorrow's version of you going to be okay with that? Can you take 10 minutes tomorrow to do them before breakfast rather than force yourself to do them tonight when you don't really feel like it? And she worked with that for a little bit, like 46% energy, and like the sleep wasn't replenishing her. And she said she leaned into what I'd been teaching her, and she decided one day not to do the dishes. She realized she hadn't gone out in nature in a few days. And so she went for a walk in the woods, and she kind of allowed the day to continue in that way, not too scheduled into her normal things. And she said she slept so well that night that the next morning her body battery said 96%.
Wow.
Right. And so it's really paying attention to those body cues as you learn them, and then leaning in and giving yourself grace. Like, why do we have to do the dishes after every single meal? Like, who cares if the kitchen's a little messy for a day, right? And so it's really allowing that grace to find the flexibility and not be so attached to our schedules, because it's easy with the go, go, go to get into that monotonous routine and monotony will be that lack of inspiration, creativity, and that's connection rest. That's a piece of rest that we need to feel inspired and full of life, and the regular schedule can really weigh us down with that.
So, what are some common misconceptions people have about rest? Because I'm sure there are a lot out there.
Definitely. I think one of the biggest ones is valid because when we slow down, that pain somewhere in our body hurts more. We have to pay attention to it, or the thoughts or emotions that we're trying to maybe run away from are more present. And so slowing down can be difficult for people because things resurface, and they surface because they want to be dealt with. They want to be let go of, they want to be paid attention to, whether it's physical or mental or emotional. And so, yeah, I think it can be hard to slow down because of that. And it's easier to distract and keep busy. But then really it's just perpetuating inside and probably making those pains worse. And so, yeah, that's the biggest one I find. But I can say from my own experience is that, yes, that happened when I was thrown into stress leave and off work. All of a sudden, I said all those emotions came up. But now that I've moved through those things and I've allowed to release them and I'm in a different space, when I slow down, the beauty I see is so amazing, right? Like you're walking in the woods and there's one trail near my house where somebody's left little tiny wooden hearts shoved in like the bark of trees. And if you're walking faster, if you're going for a run, you would never see them. But when you actually intentionally just like, I'm going to go for a slow, I'm going to connect with what's around me in the forest, then I started to see them. And I think I took like 8 or 9 pictures on an hour walk, all these different trees with these little hearts. It became like a little scavenger hunt. And there was such joy and playfulness in that experience that I would have missed if I had been going fast, right? And so there is beauty in slowing down too, that we have to remember when at first it feels discomfort, right? There's discomfort there and we don't want to, but there is the other side of that if we go through the discomfort.
Absolutely. And it's understanding that we've got to go through it to come out the other end. It's the benefits
Yeah.
of it.
Yeah. Don't sit in it.
Yeah. How can someone tell the difference between being tired and being truly depleted? Because I best people must get mixed up as well.
Very true. And I think that's something I took a while to learn myself. But one thing that I have discovered from that is almost like a tiredness is brief. A tiredness will pass pretty quickly. Like, so you're tired at the end of a day, the next day you're not tired anymore. Whereas depleted, you're constantly tired. It doesn't go away. It takes a lot longer to replenish depletion than tiredness. And so, I kind of talk about it like an elastic. So as we're recovering and we're working with our capacity to hold more and do more, if we push too far, we can snap back into depletion. And so it's really trying to really stretch ourselves little by little to hold our capacity and expand our capacity mentally and physically so that we don't slap back into depletion. And when I was working with the Rest Uncovered method myself, it was like, there were days where I'd do something and I'd be terrified it'll take me 3 days to recover, but then actually seeing, oh, wow, no, I'm good the next day. Yay, right? Like, or actually pushing myself too far on a run and then taking 3 days to recover because my body wasn't there yet. So it's really an exploration and really watching how you can hold that capacity and knowing that, when you feel really tired the next morning when you wake up, then maybe your body is a bit depleted, and what can you lean into? What can you put on pause that you maybe were going to do that day that maybe would have depleted you even further, because you're aware of it now. So awareness is also a big part of it.
So, Miranda, can you explain the Rest Uncovered method and how it supports people in understanding their needs?
So the Rest Uncovered method is 2 frameworks. The first one is the phases. So there's 5 phases. So it's depletion, which is, probably the first one most people come to me with. Pause, where we kind of stop everything we can and really take stock of what is depleting us, where can we let go of some things, some tasks. Then there's repair. So repair is actually looking at what works and what doesn't and rebuilding what you can. And then the next one's integration. So really integrating those things that maybe we would put on pause and actually sort of working with the repair and rebuilding and kind of integrating more and more that capacity stretching during this phase. And then the fifth one is sustainability. So sustainability is really working with boundaries and working with daily rhythms of rest so you can sustain yourself rather than it just be a weekend thing or a monthly thing. And then on the other side of it, the areas of rest are what support you through the phases. So the areas are the practices that you go to, the activities. And those ones are physical regulation. It's kind of tuning into the body state and what it needs, whether it's passive rest or physical rest. Because if you sit all day long at a computer, you probably do need some movement, right? As a form of rest. Not running a marathon, but that light walk in the woods, or maybe a swim, maybe some qigong, those sorts of things. And then there is stimulation. So stimulation, rest obviously is huge in our world. We have so much light and sound and, visual stimulation with computers and screens. And so that one's a big one. Mental space. So that's obviously trying to calm the mind, taking moments throughout the day to really allow it to just tune off, right? Shut off, tune out. And then there's emotional capacity. So this is the one where those repressed emotions are holding and we need a safe space to release, whether that's with a friend or, maybe a counselor, a therapist, or even journaling, talking out loud in the forest. Sometimes I did that. And then the last one is connection. And this one is inner connection and outer connection. So the inner connection is really fostering your own inner knowing and who you are. So whether that's purpose, spirituality, faith, etc. And then outer connection is the more relational part, but also the creativity and what inspires and what can you do that actually lights you up in terms of that interaction, whether that's volunteering or community events, music, anything that really fills your cup. So those are sort of the two frameworks that go together. And then what I call the rest uncovered landscape is blending the two together, where in the method I teach in my workshops and one-on-one guidance is I have a whole list of all these different ways you could feel. And so the irritability, the tiredness, the, afternoon energy dips and what that might be causing and what area of rest it points to. So, basically when you're really depleted and you kind of know what you feel, but you don't know what it means, there's a whole worksheet where you can scroll down and be like, oh, this is how I'm feeling. Oh, this is the type of rest I might be missing. And these are the activities I can do. So it's a really easy tool to actually help you in terms of rediscovering those body signals and what it's trying to tell you.
Well, that's fabulous. It really is. And I love that you have connection is one of your areas of rest, because how does connection help restore our energy?
I think when we're really depleted in that space, like say we spend a lot of time on our own, or a big one is those who are therapists or counselors themselves, they're giving out a lot, right? Like we're caregivers, we're giving out a lot, and then we're not having someone hold space for us. And so that connection piece is really important, to be able to have somebody, hold space back for you, however that might be. For me specifically, it was that inspiration and that sense of purpose. When I was really depleted and I'd lost my job, I was very much like, what do I do? And it's like, what makes me get up in the morning and that sort of stuff. And so reconnecting with the things I loved about the world and the beauty of the world, and that was nature for me, was a big healer, because I could really, loving the forest and the mountains and the water, that was a huge piece that I could connect to and feel that I'm quite small on this giant planet, and just that remembrance of that. And so yeah, connection is an important piece that we always think outwardly, but there's also the inwardly as well that is really important to connect back to ourselves in different ways.
Why is emotional rest often overlooked, and what can people do to support themselves emotionally?
Yeah, this one's definitely a tough one. And I find, for women, as sort of innate in our DNA caregivers, it is something that we struggle with. The people pleasing term comes up a lot these days in terms of how we give so much to other people, but don't fill up ourselves. And that emotional capacity, is really needed in order to give to others, as we know, but we, for some reason, override it for ourselves. And it is something that that weight of emotional exhaustion is so heavy, and it can affect the physical body because we're not dealing with the emotional body. So if you don't have the desire or means to do counseling or therapy, then, finding those community circles like I did here in the Comox Valley on Vancouver Island, where you can sit with other people who are like-minded and share. And there was one particular circle that was more just a witnessing. So you shared how you were feeling, what was on your mind. Nobody gave you suggestions or comments or feedback. It was just literally sitting and listening. And it was such a beautiful experience to just be feeling like I was held, not judged, not trying to be fixed, just accepted for who I was. And I think with our busy, go, 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 where we avoid so much of how we feel because maybe we're not in the right time and place to have a big cry or a big scream, then, kind of taking note of that when it happens and going on your drive home. I do this sometimes on the highway. I'll be driving on the highway and I'll just be like, "Rah," and I'll just let out some really big screams. And it's amazing how much it shifts the energy and just releases what might be stuck that you were carrying. So it's just in the moments you can't do that, taking note and finding space for it after work, journaling, going out with a friend, going out to the woods, or driving in your car and screaming. It does help. The little things like that do help.
There's actual classes for screaming now. You can actually get them. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Collectively, I can imagine. I've done that once. So there was probably about 15 of us and we just howled so loud. It was like, luckily we were in a little sort of like community center quite out in a rural area. Because I can only imagine what the neighbors would have thought.
For someone listening today who feels exhausted but doesn't know where to start, what would be the first thing they can do to help themselves?
I think one of the great tools to start with is kind of taking stock and that bringing in that awareness of what it is throughout your day that depletes you. What is it that actually makes you feel more tired when you do it? What drains you and what fills you up? Really starting to bring awareness into those tasks of, okay, like what is the balance here in my day? Is there more things that are depleting me than filling me up? And how can I weigh and change that balance, right? So, if there's 10 things you do in a day, if there's only 2 that fill you up, what might be able to be moved to another time, or what could you actually delegate to somebody else, right? And so that way we're actually trying to get more balance in the things that fill us up. So awareness is so important. And so, the first awareness of, oh, wow, I'm tired. Then it's like, okay, why? What is it? And going through the areas of rest and trying to see which area you might be deficient in, because it's a form of self-care, rest, right? And there's so many different ways to do that there's something out there for everyone in terms of how to replenish.
What are some simple practices people can implement this week to bring more rest into their lives?
I think continuing on with that awareness, there's little things like paying attention to what you do when you brush your teeth. Because when we brush our teeth, if you're like me, when I first started to do this work, I was like, wow, in the span of a few minutes, I open my curtains, I check my phone and see if there's any urgent messages, I put the kettle on, I maybe play with my cat, the little string, and I'm brushing my teeth with one hand. And that multitasking can really deplete us. And if we start our days that way, we're already training our body to continue multitasking throughout the day. And that's probably why we're tired after lunch. It's one of the reasons that we could be tired. And so other little things are, honestly, just trying to stay off the phone as much as possible. Like, it's amazing how you'll be in line at the supermarket and everybody's on their phone standing in line. Just don't bring it out. Just allow yourself to be standing in line, take some deep breaths, look around, be familiar with what you see, allow your eyes to move, because we also, with being on screen so much, we can stay our eyes quite focused to one place. And that can actually really tire the eyes, which then tires the body and the mental body. So there's a practice I teach called the 20-20-20 practice. So it's every 20 minutes, looking away for 20 seconds, 20 feet. So 20 minutes, 20 feet, 20 seconds. And it allows your eyes to actually just have a break and actually take other things in besides what you're focusing on, and there'll be less headaches, more like your eyes don't get as dry. And then, yeah, I get like that dullness. Like I just want to close my eyes, but I'm not tired if I'm not doing that sort of thing every now and then. And then the other big one for me that I noticed was when I would boil the kettle to make a cup of tea. Most of the time, I would actually go and do a few things while the kettle was boiling, and then 20 minutes later go, oh, right, I was making a cup of tea. So it's just paying attention to taking those little micro breaks when you can, not just for your body, but for your mind, to be able to actually allow it to just kind of stop with the overthinking or analyzing or problem solving, or trying to think of what's next, or ruminating on what happened with the conversation yesterday. And so, yeah, it's that awareness is so key, but then mindfulness and presence, being off our devices, and just allowing 2 minutes to pass when you're boiling the kettle or brushing your teeth, rather than multitasking up a lot.
It's just that slowing down, simple. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's when you hear things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we move so fast through our days. That's another little practice, is like, can you move through your day 5% slower? Just 5%, right? Just that little bit. And it's amazing how, I can't remember, there was something the other week where I was moving too fast and I left my apartment and I forgot something I needed. And it's just, like it's easy to miss things, and to just not be as prepared. And there's a funny saying. I actually learned it when I lived in England. There was a saying around, going faster doesn't get you there quicker, or something like that.
If there was one key takeaway you want every listener to walk away with today, what would it be?
That rest is not sleep. That sleep will not help you fill any emotional, relational sort of rest that's needed. Like when you're carrying the heavy weight of emotional exhaustion, going to sleep, it's still going to be there the next day, right? And so it's really not going to help sleeping more. And so really, really paying attention to the different areas of rest so that you can feel, more balanced as a whole. Because sleep's not going to fix everything, unfortunately. And there's no pill that will allow you to rest and feel replenished. It is really, all of the different pieces, and being mindful of all of those to feel balanced and well.
So where can the listeners find you online and learn more about your work, Miranda?
Yeah, restuncovered.com is where my website belongs. And there's a great tool on there, which is restuncovered.com/quiz. And so it's actually a quiz that will help you determine which phase of rest you might be in and which area of rest you might be in that will support the phase. And so that's a great way to just sort of see where you're at. And that might change every day, right? Depending on where you are and what's happening in your world. There's a resource page as well with different music playlists and different meditations and such that might be helpful for listeners. And then there's different ways to work with me. So I do online and in-person workshops. I have my first retreat coming in the fall of October 2026 here, and one-to-one guidance. And then I'm going to be releasing in August a program, and it's called the Rest Reset. And the idea is that every day you'll receive an email through over 1 month that will teach you a little bit about rest and the importance of rest and the Rest Uncovered method, and then a small practice. And it'll take no more than 10 minutes a day. And it's basically a way to weave rest into everyday life. So not to be overwhelming or feel like, it's another thing on the to-do list, but really as a way to show the small ways that we can incorporate rest through a month and hopefully really start to rebuild that relationship with rest.
So listeners, do go ahead and connect with Miranda, and you will learn a thing or two for sure. And all the links will be in the show notes too.
Fantastic. Thank you.
So Miranda, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, your story. I know this conversation is going to inspire so many other people to view rest differently and give themselves permission to slow down and listen to what they truly need.
Yeah,
I really want to acknowledge you for your work you're doing and for the difference you're making in other people's life. Miranda Brooking.
Thank you, Anita. Much appreciated. And I do hope as well that there's some inspiration and permission that people get from this.
So we are all about Create the Courage to Be Fearless podcast here. What is your definition of courage?
My definition of courage, I would say for me, it's feeling the fear and doing it anyways. You know, not the fear that says jump off a bridge, but the fear that wants you to keep you small and wants to keep you safe. Because on the other side of that, there's so much expansion, there's so much growth, and there's so much beauty and love.